in a second that this started. I'm really happy to be here with you tonight, and we can definitely have a conversation together. You are welcome to join the conversation. We're very excited to be able, hold on, to be having this conversation together tonight, and to be hosting the book launch for Man's Search for Healing. And I think that hopefully will be an interesting conversation between all of us. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Naomi Marman-Grummet. I'm the founder and director of the Eden Center, and I am really here to support this conversation. And I'm happy that we're going to have the conversation about the mind-body connection and healing and the healing powers of mikvah. If you don't know, the Eden Center works to improve the experience of mikvah and to use it as a platform to really empower Jewish women and couples around their spiritual, physical, intimate, and emotional health. The Eden Center runs community programs, we create resources, and we provide professional training around mikvah and well-being. From webinars like tonight to podcasts that come out monthly, printed resources such as our breast cancer self-awareness poster, and Birkat Emunah resource to support women and couples going through infertility, and a lot of other such resources. We run a unique mikvah attendant training course that has an emphasis on sensitivity, and a kala and a chatan teacher training, which we invite you to take part in because they're happening over Zoom. And the next mikvah attendant training actually starts right after Pesach, so anybody who's interested is more than welcome to join. I invite you to look for those programs and others on our website, www.theedencenter.com. And as always, it's my job to remind you that our work is only made possible through the generosity of our donors. So please consider making a donation to the Eden Center so that we can continue to run evenings like this at no cost to you. theedencenter.com/donate. So tonight's conversation is, as I said before, in honor of the publication of Devorah book, Man's Search for Healing. And we'll be discussing different aspects of healing and the parallels with mikvah, keeping in line with Eden's approach to having conversation around mikvah that is holistic and brings often unspoken topics to the fore. We're going to open with a short presentation about the book, and then have a conversation between us, between the panelists, with some guiding questions. And then finally, we will open for questions from any of the participants. But the truth is, even though that's our format, feel free to ask and bring your voices to the conversation whenever you want. Our speakers tonight: Devorah is a therapist who works with logotherapy and somatic experience to help patients deal with trauma. She's also a reflexologist and a bereavement counselor. She's passionate about helping people through their illness, facing different challenges and struggles, and empowering people to well-being of mind, body, and soul. Her book, Man's Search for Healing, explores the mind-body connection, the effect of unfinished business on the body, the divergence between being healed and being cured, forgiveness, post-traumatic growth, and more, as we will hear about tonight. Nechama Barash is a yoetzet halacha, a sexual health educator, a mikvah attendant, and a scholar of Talmud and halacha. She teaches in numerous Torah institutions, including Matan, Pardes, TVA, and is a frequent presenter in our Kala teacher and Balaniot training programs, for which we are very, very happy. And with no further ado, I invite you, Devorah, to share a little bit about your book, where it's coming from, what the main themes are. Just give us an introduction, what some of the important lessons are, so that we know what you've put out, and then we'll continue the discussion from there.
Okay, thank you so much, Naomi, for inviting me. And Nechama, it's wonderful to be on the panel with you as well. And thanks for all those who joined and for all those who are listening to the online presentation. Just a little bit about the book. Firstly, I'll start with the title, Man's Search for Healing. It is really not a knockoff, but a leading on from Dr. Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And this is how I got into helping people be well. My initial entry into mind-body work was through reflexology. And I felt frustrated that when people came to me with, say, infertility problems, and they said, why can't I have a baby? I want to have one. Or if cancer patients would say to me, why do I have to be sick? I'm so young. Then I didn't know what to answer them, and I couldn't help them. I would just say, look, let's work on your feet and your hands, and let's try and get your hormones, let's boost your immune system, and let's try to do that. But I felt quite inadequate in the way I could help people. And that's when logotherapy came into my life. I went on an incredible trip to Poland, and I felt very empowered by how the stories of our ancestors there in Poland overcame their struggles, their challenges, their huge dilemmas and their moral dilemmas. And I felt that there was a lesson for myself and for all of us to learn in what we could each do to overcome our struggles and difficulties. And because none of us actually live in Disneyland, we all live real lives with challenges, difficulties, huge illnesses, problems all around. We need to be able to help ourselves. And this is where logotherapy comes in, which is so beneficial. It helps people ask questions like, what now? Instead of asking, why me? And for me, this was a huge learning. I was also struggling with the loss of my own father, who died at a young age, and wanting to understand, as well as other difficulties and challenges. We all go through things. And when we change our question from why me, because oftentimes we do feel why me, but when we change that question, because it doesn't actually help us to, we're not going to firstly get an answer. Hashem doesn't communicate to people directly anymore, unfortunately. And it keeps us stuck in the victim mentality when we want to know why me. But when we start asking the question, what now? That is when we start to empower ourselves to see, yes, this has come into my life, and there are still a lot of choices that I have around this. I might not be able to change what's happening right now, but I can certainly change my attitude. I can certainly have a say in how I shop. I can certainly have a say in where my morals and values are going to take hold and help me get through this difficulty. I'm going to look in the past, what other tools I was able to find to be able to help me get through this. And this is how I love to help and empower people. And that's what the book was really about, was my logotherapy thesis that I was doing on, I took 3 different case studies. The book is only speaks, or there's 1 case study at the end, but there were 3. And it's following people who have illnesses or medical conditions that I worked with, and as they found meaning in their life struggle or challenges, how their illnesses or symptoms improved. And that was the goal. And then throughout the book, with the different chapters, what I've done is I've given tools on how we can empower ourselves, because I feel that when someone is an active participant in their own healing journey, then that is when they are more empowered. They have a say. You know, and I do believe, of course, that we work with doctors. I just don't believe that we give our power away. I believe that we need to have a say and be active participant in our own healing journey. Because when the doctors look at what's in front of them, a medical file, they don't know your personality. They don't know who you are and what you've overcome before. They don't know your inner strengths, and we have to be the ones to advocate for ourselves. So that's how this book came about, different tools, and we can speak about the different chapters. Specifically, one that I really feel is a big one is the difference between being healed and being cured. And there is a difference. I did a lot of research about it, and unfortunately, not everybody can be cured of what they are suffering from, but everybody has the opportunity to be healed on an internal basis. And this is something that deeply inspires me. And I always say to my clients and remind myself, if I woke up today breathing, it means I have a second chance for anything, to repair any wrongs I've done yesterday, or to start over and do things again today differently. And when we can have this kind of outlook, then it's not the circumstances in our life that define what's going on, but it is the circumstances that reveal to us who we really are and how we show up to what is happening in our lives. So I think this was the intention behind the book, to help people, firstly, to understand the mind-body connection, because today we know that if I'm nervous and I'm waiting for a doctor to call me, then that is going to have a physical manifestation in my body as a knot in my stomach. Or if I'm excited about something, that's going to also feel like something in the body. So our emotions and our state of mind plays out in our bodies, and we cannot separate the mind and the body. So I go to lengths to discussing this in the body. And I really believe in the way that I teach is through telling stories. So there are many stories in the book of empowering stories that speak about healing, stories that speak about curing as well. And there's even stories that speak about people who weren't able to get cured, but were healed. And even if that meant that they died of their disease, they still were able to come to a place of healing at the end of their life. So this is something that I am quite passionate about. I'm passionate about understanding about illness, what's the role of illness, how we can relate to illness, understanding our mind-body connection. I speak at quite lengths. I did a lot of research to looking up about forgiveness and the role of forgiveness, letting go, setting ourselves free from burdens that we carry from the past, uncovering our unfinished business and bringing that to a close, and really using this life and the difficulties and challenges that come our way as stepping stones and not stumbling blocks. And I think that's what I'm trying to teach in the book. I have a chapter also about post-traumatic growth, how when we go through difficult things, and sometimes it doesn't help to look at the difficulty we might be experiencing at this moment right now, but if we can look in previous ones from the past and say, wow, people said to me at the time, I'm amazing, or I'm so strong, and I wonder how I got through it. But that is a message to us how we get through it. And if we even look at how the human cycle is laid out for us, a little baby at the tender age experiences pain. It starts even with teething, but that is to learn. We learn that we can overcome difficulties, and even from such a young age, it's already there and already in the system to show us, yes, we do have tools, and if we don't have them yet, we can cultivate them and find a way to be our own active participant in our healing journey. Maybe that's enough for now, Naomi. I could talk forever, actually.
Nechama, do you have anything that Devorah's introduction sort of raised for you?
There were a few things. First of all, I really would love to get the book. It sounds like something I could really use in the work that I do. Please forgive the background noise. I'm sitting in a seminary and I went into an office and it's Adar. So there's a lot of the usual Adar sounds that go on at night that I wasn't even aware of. I think those questions, what I really responded to is, why did these things happen to me? And one of the things I find in the counseling I do around intimacy and sexuality and mikvah and nida is this sense of coercion, or I'm being forced to do something or experience something I don't want to experience, this sense of powerlessness. And one of the things I work on, and I love to get even more tools in this, is flipping it so that I'm choosing, right? It's how you look. Do I feel powerless because the halakha is making me keep this, because the rabbis are making me keep this? Or I really encourage I'm choosing to keep this. And even if they push back, well, I have to keep it. No, you choose to keep it. Even if your choice is to feel a sense of commitment or obedience or submission to halakha, there's choice in that. And once we already feel we're making a choice, we gain agency, right? We gain a certain ownership over what our choices are, regardless of what the starting point is. So first and foremost, I really think that idea of attitude, my attitude towards what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, is very, very central in a healthy relationship with sexuality. And because we're talking about mikvah and nida, there as well, of course, because it's so intimately connected to my sexuality and my body and my sense of self. And so I think is really, really, I cannot overemphasize how important the sense of control, agency, power, well, again, in the positive sense, to deflect the powerlessness. If I'm infertile, if I'm struggling with perimenopause, if I'm struggling with good sexuality in my marriage, and it never occurred to me this would be a struggle, that sense of powerlessness can really backfire to negativity, and then the mind body, right? I'm never in the mood, sex hurts, sometimes sex does hurt, right? And sometimes I'm really not in the mood. But certainly if I'm feeling out of control with my body or what's happening to my body, the mind body piece is going to become potentially toxic. And so, as I said, I really try to encourage the couples I counsel to be honest with themselves about what it is they're doing, what their boundaries are, how they're doing it, how mikvah impacts them. Again, honestly, not romanticizing the things that are difficult or demonizing, right? Demonizing the things that are difficult as if all the problems are there. We only didn't have to do this or keep this, everything would be okay. It's really not that simple. And if I could give just a short example, I was speaking to a rabbi who's very prominent in mental health issues and talking about a fairly large leniency that a couple had come to me looking for. And I called him, I knew he'd be open to discussing the leniency. And one of the things he says is he's found that with couples, they come absolutely agitated, like they need this kula, they need this leniency, and then everything will be okay, right? There's all this anxiety and around loss of control. And when he gives it to them, right, it's a quick fix, but the problem recurs like a month later. And this time maybe feeling shame or guilt over having used the leniency. In other words, the quick fixes are just band-aids. There's so much deeper work that often has to go into honestly acknowledging a challenge and then beginning the work of my attitude and my choice and waking up every day. Yesterday wasn't so great, but today I have an opportunity to do it differently. And it's a lot of work. And usually the quick fix is, even if I find the kula that I thought I was looking for, the problem's going to come back a few weeks later, a month later.
Devorah, are you able to possibly address some of the things that we can do to inculcate those attitudes within ourselves? Like, to give us some direction for how to think about that?
Yeah. I think actually this is the perfect time of the month. I know, Naomi, I spoke to you that I was going to mention this. If we look at the Megillat Esther, there really is a setup for us of seeing Esther as a character where she is quite voiceless and powerless, where she has been forced into a situation that she might not have chosen for herself. I mean, she is just, having to do what she's told to do. And where all of a sudden a situation arises where the Jewish people are under great threat, and there's something that she can do about it, but she's too scared. She's too scared to do something about it. And this is really like a real logotherapy moment where Mordechai says to her, you know what, Esther, Hashem is going to save the Jewish people, but you get to decide if you want your name attached to that. And in that moment, it says, like, Esther dressed herself in royalty, right? And then she goes to the king, that she took on the all that she could become, and that's what she went with. And she even says, I'm going to give my best shot at this, and if I perish, I perish. She was even prepared to lose her life over it. And we see that when she finds her voice and she starts to stand up for herself, and she is in a more leadership role in her own life, that's when things change, not only for herself, but for the Jewish people as well. She thought, the king will never let me in, he hasn't called me. She found every excuse not to do what needed to be done. And I think that sometimes we get caught in seeing things from a negative perspective. We might not like something, and just Nechama, from what you're speaking about, like I hear also some people absolutely love to go to the mikveh and some absolutely hate to go to the mikveh. And you see like all the different grades of what's inside and what are the problems and what are the hassles and what are the cleanliness and the all sorts of issues that people have. And it reminds me of a story of Dr. Viktor Frankl in the camps, where really, if we think of all the inmates, they were exactly the same. No food, no hair, no clothes, no furniture, no money, no family, no names, just absolutely starving and living in essential, meaningless lives. Yet he chose to walk around every day and find out what it was in people that woke them up that day, what it was that they were looking forward to the future. He went around counseling people and helping them to find meaning in just the thought of there's a cousin in America waiting for you, or there's that book you haven't yet published, and spreading hope and giving hope to people. I mean, he would work at the railroad tracks every day and doing absolute menial work, using his hands for shtiot, for absolute nonsense. What he said is that he knew that at the end of the day, there was going to be a sunset and nobody could take that beauty away from him. And that's what got him through the day. And when I hear things like that, I'm like, wow, if he could do that in his difficulty and challenges, then I can do it too with mine. And I think we need to ask ourselves the question, is this important to me? Right? Like, if this is important, then let me find a way of how I can make it beautiful. Let me find a way of how I can make it special. Let me start looking from the lens. I think, Nechama, you said the lens of what's not working, to find the way of looking at it, from another perspective. And even, with the burning bush, Hashem says to Moshe, take off your shoes and stand on the side. When you look at things from a different perspective, you sometimes see things differently. And if we don't like a situation we are in, then it is up to us to find another way of looking at it, to find, if this is something that's important and we're going to be doing it anyway, to find a way to bring meaning into the situation. And I think that all the chapters in my book are trying to help people become that person where you have a role in your positivity, you have a role in your healing journey, to let go of the resentments from your past, to really embrace the life that you want to live today. And you know what? It might be that you can't change the physical problem, or you can't change the illness, or you can't, whatever, fill in the blank. You can't change that circumstance or that situation. But what you can change is the way you look at it. What you can change is the way you show up to it every single day. And when you start doing that, you feel empowered, and that's when things start changing. In the book, I actually write about this idea, which is when there's an idea that illness comes to an address. Illness or challenge comes to an address. If this is the address where you live at, this is the person you are, this is the way your life is at this moment, and then illness comes to this. Let's say you work on yourself and you change certain things and you change your perspective and you grow and you become an active participant and you let go of things that were resentful. All of a sudden, you're not living in this address anymore. Now you live at this address, and that's not the same place where the illness came to. Right? So I see people all the time who will say to me, that illness that came into my life was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it opened new doors. I never knew I could do those things had that difficulty not come to me. My daughter has written in her bedroom this beautiful, an anonymous saying, which says, I never knew how strong I was until being strong was my only option. That sometimes, unfortunately, this is how this human life is structured, that difficulty and challenge arises, and that's when we meet who we really are. And almost it's like an invitation or an opportunity for us to step up and become that, just like Esther did. She stepped up and she landed up saving the Jewish people, and 2,000 something years later, we're still speaking about her, right? Isn't that incredible? And I'm not saying that any of us need to become Esther, but I'm saying that we all have the opportunities in our small difficulties and challenges or illnesses or troubles or tsorot that we go through. We all have the ability to stand up like Esther and look for that. And maybe one other example from the Torah that we can look at is Yaakov, when he is fighting with the angel all night long. This huge fight, this struggle in life, this pain and struggle. And then he gets injured, towards the dawn. And the angel is about to take leave of Yaakov, and Yaakov says, please don't leave before you bless me. And that is so strange. Like, what is he looking for? Blessing here. He's fought with this man the whole night, and this man has even injured him, and now he's asking for a blessing. And I always like to look at how can we learn from these stories in our day and age where we live in. And when I look at the story, I look to see that what Yaakov was saying is, I've just gone through the hardest night of my life. I've even been injured and hurt through that, and I want to find the blessing. And I think that is also open to all of us. And that is how we change the why me to the what now. We start looking at, what can I do to overcome this? Yes, this sucks and this is terrible and I absolutely hate this, but how can I still show up where I feel at the end of the day, when I close my eyes and I go to sleep, I tried my best today. I can feel proud of myself. So I think those are some of the tools that we can use to, and inspiration all around us in our forefathers and in the modern stories as well.
So, I'll just, what came to mind was a lovely story, very actually inspiring story I heard from a woman who was going through infertility. And we know that mikvah can really be a difficult space. It's a reminder every month of my emptiness, that I'm going home and I'm not pregnant. Now, maybe the hope is starting again that I will be pregnant, but it's very fraught for some people. And I heard a lecture. I was on a panel with a woman who had been infertile for 8 years, actually a Reform rabbi in London. And she had this beautiful entry point to the mikveh, which was, she really felt it was a pool of tears that was crying with her every month. And it was such a powerful image. And she said that the mikveh, the water of the mikveh held her and cried with her every month. And that really is what really stood out for her on this 8-year journey. And, really the power to be able to find that in the ritual, in this process you're going through, as opposed to seeing, the what there isn't. The mikveh as a reminder of what there isn't, I think really embodies what you're talking about, the change in attitude, how I find something in these spaces that are challenging, that have strength in them and resilience built into them. And I think if you look at Esther, and I saw a wonderful idea by Wendy Amsalam, that really Esther is able to become Esther because she finds Vashti in herself, right? That the shadow of Vashti, who was far more, at least in the brief mention, right, more outspoken, more, she refuses, she's not passive, she's not obedient. And Esther really is very passive and obedient, and she has to find something within herself that allows her to become something different. And I think with the Yaakov and Esav story, I believe it's Aviva Zornberg who writes, Yaakov has to, you could say, either conquer the Esav in himself. I prefer the idea of find the Esav in himself, but this idea of finding hidden depths that we weren't willing to look for or look at, looking back on our story and finding alternative endings, somewhere where we can open a different door that we thought we had closed, might be some of the ways in which we can find resilience, right? That can surprise us. So I think both of those are good stories of how do we become something different than the pattern of behavior that we're accustomed to the familiar. And there are moments in life where what is demanded of us is the unfamiliar. And those are the moments, like you said, sometimes people will see an illness, a challenge, a special needs child as a gift, not maybe in the immediate experience of it, but as the years go on or the time goes by, seeing the blessing that comes from this unusual or difficult or challenging experience, and saying, wow, I was able to lean into that and find strengths within myself, or I was able to see the added value that it never would have occurred to me when I was on the other side could even be could even be in there.
Yeah. Well, Nechama, I think that story you told of the woman who went into the mikveh and felt held by the tears, that is magnificent. And I think if we can all be creative, we can find that way to embrace our challenges and find the healing and the holding in each situation. And it also reminded me of some statement that I heard, which is, I didn't choose this, but for some reason I was chosen. And then there is almost like something about us can be revealed through the struggle and the difficulty. And no one ever is going to choose any form of tzorot, but it happens, and that's just what life is about. So that story you told, I found very touching and beautiful, beautiful story. And I hope many people listen to this recording just to hear even that story. There's one other thing I wanted to mention is where I spoke in the beginning about partnering with doctors. And I feel that that's very important, because like at the moment I'm working with a cancer patient who for the third time is going through cancer treatments, and her doctor is not even aware of the strength of character that she has gotten through each time, and just looks at facts and figures in what blood tests say. And it is so important to have the ability to speak up for yourself, as Esther did, to find that voice and speak up for yourself. Don't call me by my diagnosis, call me by my name and speak to me in that way. And that can be empowering. And there's this beautiful, beautiful story also, it's not in the Tanakh, I don't know, maybe it's in the Gemara, of Elisha, who comes to this woman whose husband had died, and she comes to speak to him and says, my children are going to be taken away. There's so much debt that I owe, and I have no money and I can't pay. And Elisha says to her, go and look in your home and tell me what you've got. And she says, all I have at home is one bottle of oil. And he says, go to your neighbors and get every bottle of empty bottle that you can find. And she goes and she collects every empty bottle that she can find. And then he says, now start pouring the oil into these bottles. And as she starts to pour the oil, miraculously, the oil lasts and lasts and fills up all these bottles. And then he says to her, do you have any more? And she says, no. And that's when the miracle ends. And then she's able to go and sell all of these bottles of oil. And then she's able to redeem her sons and continue to live. And this story is so magnificent, because what he says to her, and this idea I heard from Rav Eitan Ben David, and he says this to her when he says, go, and he says, what do you have at home? And what he's really asking her is, what do you have inside? He's not saying to her, you go and find someone else's inspiration. He's saying, go and look inside what's in your home already. This is our home. My body is my home. Go and find what you have at home that can help you with this healing. And for some of us, it might be journaling. For others, it might be dancing. Others could be painting. It could be absolutely anything. It could be, saying affirmations or praying. It could be absolutely anything, hiking. Find what it is that helps you to invite your healing in, because also at the beginning I spoke about the difference between being healed and being cured. And once also I had the privilege of working many times, unfortunately, with terminal cancer patients who know that this is the last chapter. And for some of them, it's very hard, and they don't want this to be their last chapter. And there's a denial and a resentment and an anger, and we work through all of that. And after that, we can work on acceptance. And with that can come healing of, if today is the last day, and we really don't know when any of us will have a last day. Nothing is guaranteed to any of us, but if today is my last day, this is how I'm going to choose to do it. This is how I'm going to speak to the ones I love. This is what I want to do. These are the things I want to say, and we get to have a say in that, and that is called healing. Then it doesn't, not that it doesn't matter, but if there isn't going to be a cure, at least there is still something within our realm of responsibility and opportunity to find our own healing as well.
So something you said, again, I want to, just build off of the idea of having a sense of agency. You talked about going to the doctor and saying, call me by my name, or this is how I want you to treat me. And I think we very much recommend that women take a similar attitude in a very respectful way. It's not a matter of being, obstreperous or belligerent. It's a matter of walking in and saying, this experience is important to me, and I want to feel comfortable in the experience, and knowing what your rights are and what you can ask for, what kind of room you can ask for, what kind of tefillah you can ask for, right? How I want the mikveh attendant to work with me so that I can have a positive experience, to see the mikveh attendant as a partner in this endeavor, and to ask that she give you space to immerse according to your practice and your tradition and the way you've been taught. And so I think that in a similar way with the doctor, you want to try to flatten the hierarchy. As it is, you feel vulnerable as a patient going in, but if you can ask that the doctor talk to you a certain way, treat you a certain way, explain certain basic information to you, you already gain a certain presence in the exam room that makes you less vulnerable and less powerless. And I think at mikveh as well, those questions can and should be asked, and opening up a respectful conversation with the mikveh attendant so that you feel that you're being heard and seen the way you want to be, I think is central for many women in having an inspiring and positive and comfortable experience.
Yeah. Maybe I'll also just share a mikveh experience that I had that was very uplifting. Just over a year ago, I had a really tragic accident when I fell on my head and I broke my neck. I fractured my C2 vertebra, and I was very lucky that as you can see, like Baruch Hashem, I'm well and I'm healed. But I was very lucky that if you fracture C2, it could be fatally dangerous and or paralyzing. And Baruch Hashem, that wasn't me. And it happened on a Monday morning, and on the Wednesday night, I was supposed to go to the mikveh. And I also feel blessed that mikveh has been a magnificent part of my husband and my marriage. It's been something special, something we've looked forward to always, and something that has been something intimate that has brought a lot of connection to us. So I felt that, I need to get to the mikveh as soon as possible, just because also I didn't want to stay in that place of being in Tumah. I wanted to be tahor. So there was absolutely no way I was confined to a brace 24/7 that I could not take off. It was very challenging, very hard to wear. It was very painful. And you obviously can't go into the mikveh wearing a brace. And but I was determined to find a way. And my wonderful friend and osteopath, Savin Hilkovitz, she helped me, and she spoke with Dr. Sharon Grossman, who is a Morah Lahalacha. And together they found a way and asked others, people who they consulted with, how I could get to the mikveh. And I have to just say that sometimes, we take something for granted. It's there in my life, and that's just what it is. But when there's a threat of something which is so dear, special, and precious to us, it's going to be taken away, that you do so much more and so dear. And I remember when I eventually went to the mikveh, and my friend Savin accompanied me. And she helped me to shower, and because she's an osteopath, she could take care of my neck when we took the brace off. And the mikveh attendants could not believe the effort I was making to get to the mikveh. And they showered me with such brachot and such praise that it's still dear to me, like 1 year later, when I just think of that. And it made me feel like so special in this beautiful, beautiful mitzvah that can be available for everyone. You know, it like depends on the eyes with which we look at what is so dear and so special in front of us. So I thought, you know, that would be, it was something, another of the hurdles of the difficulty that I was experiencing, that, one person said to me, "What will go in 3 months when you take the brace off?" And I was like, "No, it's not going to work like that, because this is important to me and I will find a way of how to get this done." And and I did. And maybe that's the message. Like, let's find a way not only to help people who are struggling to get to the mikveh, but also helping those who are struggling to be in the mikveh, to find a way to perceive the beauty of what this can do to enhance magnificent connection between husband and wife.
That's a beautiful story. And I think the attitude that you brought to it really helps to change the way that, you're looking at it, and then reflected back in what the other said to you was sort of a reflection of how much value you had put onto it as well. I want to ask, and you addressed this a little bit before, but sometimes a person is stuck in a certain mindset, or they're looking at it and they feel the challenge and they're asking the wrong question. Why is this happening? Or they're feeling anger and frustration. And we have to look deep inside of us, but are there any specific things that can help to shift any kinds of things that, there's no exact formula, but sometimes a person needs something to help them overcome and to make that switch. They want to, but they don't know how to do that.
Yeah. So I think it starts with attitude. It also starts with gratitude. Like, if we can start looking at things to be grateful for, then we can start to be grateful for the things that we're looking at. There are small things, and I know people speak about writing gratitude journals, but if we are in that mindset of why me, right, then it's a certain way of looking at the world. And so we need to build new muscles. Like, if I want, I need to first run to the light, the light post, or run to the corner, and then build up to the next corner. So we need to start creating for ourselves new things, new habits of catching ourselves when we're in that place. And this is where I find mindfulness very, very important as well, in meditation. It helps us come back to the present moment. Sometimes we've, gone off somewhere in our mind and we're in that same dark place again, and woe is me and all of that. And if we're aware that that's where we've gone, that's the first opportunity we get, that, okay, can I bring myself back on track? But sometimes we're not even aware, and then that's where it's nice. One can get books. I'll show you, there's a lot of inspiration in my book to help people make those changes. I bring a lot of anonymous clients who I've worked with to show their life stories of what has happened and changes that were made. And if one is still having trouble or difficulty, I do also private therapy online. And I'm happy to help. I love the word in Hebrew, melava. I love that word, because I feel every person has within them the keys for their own healing. And it's not that I'm going to make it happen for them, but I'm going to just help them unlock that key. Help them open up to the wisdom that they already have within themselves. And sometimes someone needs a melava, someone to accompany them on their journey to where this challenge and difficulty is bringing them. And there's also a mindfulness teacher, John Kabat-Zinn, who says, wherever you go, there you are. That, even if we are placed, if we think, if I just had this, that's when I'll be happy. And then poof, that comes, and no, it didn't happen. It's because we take ourselves into every situation. And so that's where the change needs to start in us. It's not that, if he just cleaned up his mess, then everything would be good. Or if she just, got a job, then everything will be fine. It is really something deeper, that when we change, that's when things start to change around us. So it's little things, starting small, start to appreciate, because when we can appreciate, when the big things happen, we've already got a muscle that's trained to appreciate and to look for things. And I think that was one of the biggest things that helped me with my healing. And my book was actually complete when I had already written the acknowledgements, and I had 3 days was my deadline, was the end of December was my deadline to publish the book. And on the 27th of December, that's when I had my accident. So I had to basically take all the chapters of the book and apply them to my own healing, which is quite awesome. So there's a bonus chapter in the book about how I broke my neck and what I used from the tools to help myself through the process. So I think the time to start on these things is not when the crisis happens. The time to start cultivating a kind to what now, what now can be applied to when the did something, or the way you speak to a child who hasn't done something right. There is a what now, in situations like that. And that's where we need to start practicing these, cultivating these practices to be able to see different results. Then when the big things come, we can just continue to help ourselves.
I definitely think that Nechama was saying before that in the realm of mikvah, we have to practice this with belaniot and, bringing ourselves and knowing our rights around mikvah. But I think that also with things that are issues with Taharat HaMishpacha and Nida, oftentimes we have to practice that in other ways too, like in our conversation with our spouse, to say, this is how it will be helpful for me if you could show up on mikvah night. And, doing that and being partners, and each partner saying, okay, well, I would like this, or I would like this. This would make it more special for me. And starting that also within our relationship can also help to make it. And I think also, Nechama is a great example of like learning with somebody to give yourself tools to know more, of what can be, and how, like, even within the practice of Nida for ourselves, there's so much possibility, and sometimes we don't know enough, and sometimes we have to ask, and this is difficult for me. Is there any other halachic way? Is there anything that I can do? How can I see this? And sometimes speaking to different people helps to find ways that can help you to reframe, and then you can connect in different ways.
And I like the idea of what you said about a milava, right? And that can be a yoatzat halakha, it could be a madrichat kalot that you really connected to. For a man, maybe his madrich hatan, or a rav that he feels gives good guidance, not just in Torah, but in personal matters. There are rabbanim who also have degrees in therapy or in counseling, and finding people who can provide whatever it is, the emotional support, the religious support, the spiritual guidance. We need malavim throughout our lives. It might be a parent that we stay, hopefully a parent remains relevant, or as I said, a religious advisor or a therapist, right? All of those are people we can turn to help us redirect ourselves when we get stuck.
I'd like to ask one last thing, and then if anybody has any questions, feel free to send them to me, or raise your hands and we'll allow you to say. But how do you see the mind body coming together in both healing and mikvah specifically? We've spoken about some of the things, but
I think that the mikvah is a spiritual healing. It's a spiritual changes your status. And for me, that's why it was so important to go into the mikvah. I was in no state to be intimate with my husband, but it still didn't mean I wanted to stay a neder, in a neder condition. I wanted to be able to take on. For me, I was taught beautifully, and I have always cherished this mitzvah of mikvah. So for me, I wanted to have that because it is not just about you put your body in this body of water, but that you actually, it changes a part of your soul as you go through this process and you say that bracha. And leaving the waters, then also you have a way of blessing your month, of how you move forward with your husband. And there's a lot in our own control that we can do. So I feel it's the soul part of the healing, the mind, the body, and the soul. And I think the mikvah is a beautiful way to add to that equation of what's going on in the relationship. It's not just about the body, that you bring your body home to your husband. That's not at all. That you're bringing kedusha home, and a type of energy which I needed as well to help my neck heal. I needed that too, and and I think the way it's set up as well, for a certain amount of years, a woman is going to a mikvah, and then there comes a time when that's not needed anymore, after menopause. And hopefully in those years of use, but that something has been cultivated to be able to then carry it to the next phase of the relationship. So I see the mikvah very much as the soul part of mind, body, soul healing. It's the triangle, part of that triangle. And they all work and feed off each other.
So I love the way you describe that and how powerfully you connect to this mitzvah. And I think, different people might be looking for different language as they try to connect. I often like to talk about transitions from non-sexual space to sexual space. The idea that something significant happens when I go through the mikvah, as I'm choosing to go through the mikvah, and that within our relationship, we're intentional and thoughtful about what that means, what that trends. So in the best possible sense, right, we've crafted or been aware of the pre-mikvah space where we worked on perhaps other aspects of our relationship. As I said, the non-sexual, now we're moving towards the sexual, where, not everything has to line up perfectly, but sometimes having separate spaces allows me here to be more in my mind, here more in my body, and then there are moments when I try to bring those together. But really, something I had said earlier, right? Helping couples be honest about what this means for them, what this means for their intimacy, what their goals are in their intimacy, and I think that mikvah can be an anchor around some of those conversations, those intentional conversations around mind, body, or around sexual, non-sexual, the physical, the emotional, and etc. And as well, there are couples who find that mikvah is not beneficial, and then choose to extend their non-mikvah time or their permitted time, their sexual time. And today with hormones, obviously you can do that. And so I think that sometimes the mind body does not align around mikvah. That can be very jarring and very difficult for couples, especially those raised to seek out what you so beautifully described. And then they find the mitzvah does not do that for them, does not benefit. And then they're sent into a tizzy, a failure of like, what's wrong with us that this isn't working? And so I want to acknowledge those couples and acknowledge that sometimes what they'll do is say, okay, we're just going to find a different way to handle this. And that might be by just not becoming nida for months and sometimes even years, depending on the preparation. And then we've avoided that. And we've kept our mind body much more aligned and organic by not forcing a separation between the sexual and the emotional. And so I think that's worth acknowledging as well, that every woman who is choosing to keep taharat mishpacha, it impacts them in the ways that it does, and throughout our lives that can change. You said it's a period of time, but if I get married at 20 and menopause is at 55, that's a long time to be keeping this mitzvah. And then, like you said, suddenly at 55, it's over. And then what about all of that meaning I felt in the mitzvah? How do I transition after? And so I think this is always, this is the kind of mitzvah that throughout our lives, or a kind of experience often forces a reconsideration of exactly what Naomi said, the mind thought, right? Like, where is the impact? And sometimes during my childbearing years, it's going to look like this, and in my post-childbearing and perimenopause years, and then menopause. And, really it is actually a wonderful opportunity, right? Which is what we're doing now, to think about a lot of the things that Devorah talks about in her book, which is throughout my life, my body changes and my need for intimacy and connection and sexuality changes for both of us in the relationship. And mikvah often is a scaffold on which I can unpack some of those things.
Beautiful. That was a great way to bring it all together. And I really want to thank both of you for sharing insights, and Devorah for exposing us to the topics in your book. I want to encourage everybody, I'm going to share on the chat now, to look at the book. It's available on Amazon, and it seems like it has so much that everybody can take from. So, and in wrapping up, I want to say that I encourage everybody to look at that, but also to join other upcoming events that the Eden Center is holding. There's a continuing education for college teachers on March 19th about using tools of mediation in your college teaching and with couples. And there's another session on March 23rd in Hebrew, how to guide a mixed religious, non-religious couple who are getting married. Both of those programs are on Zoom like tonight. Check out our web page, our homepage on the website, www.theedencenter.com. Donate if you can, and like us on Facebook and social media so that you can find out about programs like tonight. And thank you everybody for coming. Devorah and Nechama, thank you really for enriching us with your conversation and your very deep, thoughtful back and forth, which has really been a pleasure to be a part of.
Thank you. It was a wonderful conversation.
Yes. Mutual.
Bye, Leto.
Thank you so much.